Welcome, Ashes to Ruby's family. Jon here. We're going to be talking about step 4 today. So step 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And as we get into step 4, we've talked about step 1, 2, and 3. And so this is a progressive experience of understanding knowledge and being able to hear from God. We're starting to hear from God. This is a spiritual experience to get to a spiritual solution. It says as we're at step 3, the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And so once I've realized that, I've made this concession in step 1, that my life is a train wreck, that when I use things that I'm getting ease and comfort for, I'm chugging, I'm consuming, that when I do this, I'm powerless. It's when I stop, I can't. When I start, I can't stop, and when I do stop, I keep starting again. And it's all to numb the pain and the hurt and the emptiness and the boredom and the restlessness and the irritability and discontentment that I had inside probably my whole life. And so my spiritual condition is unsatisfied. My spiritual condition is lost and lonely and broken, and it's really apart from God. All of this is to get to God. That's what I've been trying to do my whole life. I just found it in other spirits. And so once I concede to that, to my inmost being, I'm into step 2 going, my only hope is God. However, I'm perceiving that at this point, it's just actually declaring that there is a God that created all things, a God of the universe that breathed life out of his mouth, and he cares about me. And so I actually give him permission to protect and care for my life. That's what I've been doing my whole entire life. Caring, consuming, protecting myself, taking care of myself, guarding my walls, all of this stuff. And now I'm putting my faith into the love and power of God. And so we do a declaration in our 3rd step prayer, and now I'm willing to abandon myself utterly to him. So there's no amen at that prayer, but we go into step 4 and to actually be able to follow through with the decision of giving my will and my life over to the care of God. I'm unable to do that. I can say that all day long. I have said sorry. I have said I'll never drink again. I've said 100 different apologies and excuses and justifications for my behavior. So what I say out of my mouth doesn't necessarily have weight to it. But as I say this declaration, as I turn my will and my life over to the care of God, I want to follow through with it. So step 4, 5, 6, 7 is that follow through. And so we get into step 4 and we get to see what's in the container, getting in the way of God. And so in step 4, we get to see what I've consented to with the enemy, because in the spiritual world, there's a thing called consent. There's no age of consent. So the enemy comes in at any age of your life through an experience. They all happen to us. Experiences all happen. Good parenting, bad parenting, no parenting, abuse and harsh parenting, all of the stuff that happens, our family of origin, our schooling, teachers, kids that bully, our home life, all of that stuff. There's always something that happens to us or about us, and then there's a message from the enemy of fear. And the message could see you don't matter. You're being taken advantage of. You're weak. And then I come into agreement with that. Yeah, I'm weak. And then I make a vow of I'm never going to let anybody see me be weak again. And I make a vow and a promise that no one, but I'm 3 or 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And so I've consented to the voice of fear. I've agreed with it. And so that's the spiritual realm. Now fear has a foothold on the inside of my temple, on the inside of the Garden of Eden. That's what I'm recovering. That's what I'm going back to. I want to have the hand-in-hand communication with God, the experience that Adam and Eve had in the garden. And so my goal is in step 4 is to come out of consent with fear and into the consent of God's love, because at the core of love, you have to have consent. Otherwise, it's control or bullying or mandating, setting up a protocol because this is what's best for you. But love actually is an invitation. But at the core and the nature of love is consent. And so fear is this corrosive red thread in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says it's the corrosive red thread that shot through the fabric of our existence. And so this is all below the surface. This is at the bottom, the roots of this tree. And so changing my behavior is never going to work. I have to get to the root problems of it. And so what the inventory process does is we start at the top of resentment and we filter it down to fear, and we get to see everything that we've come into consent with and give that to the care of God. And fear, I had a really impactful experience with that when my son was young. He was about 8 years old or 6 years old. He must have been about 6, and we're in the grocery store, and I'm looking at packaging and putting it in my cart, and I see him go around the corner. He's just, kind of lost in a daydream, investigating. And as a good dad, I don't go to the mango section or the produce section. I follow him, but I trail back a little bit. And so he gets going and he goes around a corner, and he goes down into the milk aisle, where all the fridges are. The yogurt and the butter and the eggs and all that stuff, and so I'm just trailing back, and he's la-di-da, and he gets to where the milk is, and a couple people are there, and they open up the fridge, and he kind of gets startled and cold, and he instantly realizes that he's alone and none of his needs are getting met. He couldn't articulate it, but he started to cry, and he just felt disconnected. He felt fear. And so I waited a little bit just to, maybe teach him a lesson not to wander off. But the reality was he was gripped in fear. None of his needs were being met, of being protected and cared for. And so I came over and I put my hand on his shoulder, and he kind of looked up startled and had his little lip going. And, in that instant, that love cast out his fear. And there was this connection. There was the recovery of the love of the Father to his Son. And so that's what this process does. We've looked for these senses of ease and comfort. We go to these different things. Maybe you never had your dad touch you on the shoulder and you just were crying, and so our nature is to soothe ourselves. And so you might have found that in pornography or dating or relationships or hurting yourself or drugs and alcohol, and you fill in the blank. And so that is the false narrative of the enemy of fear. It brings you into these addictions and tries to destroy and take your life and isolate you to do that, to accomplish its mission. And so these are things of a sense of ease and comfort. But the Bible says, my rod and my staff will comfort you. God actually says, I'm the good shepherd. I have a rod and a staff, and it will comfort you. So discipline and instruction and protection will actually be my comfort as the good shepherd comforts me. And that's what I've been looking my whole life. A child knows that they are loved because they are disciplined, that there is somebody that's caring for them, setting up boundaries and rules for them to operate properly in, for their growth and nourishment and ability to succeed as young people. And so this process in step 4 is fact-finding and fact-facing. So there's 2 parts of it where it's really hard to see what you can't see. That's obvious. Today my power went out, and I was in the bathroom, and I had to get a flashlight because I couldn't see the simple things that I knew that were there, the soap and the shampoo and all that stuff. Okay, maybe not the shampoo, but the soap. I use shampoo on my beard. All the hair falls down the older I get. So there I am, having the light shine on the things that I need to see for the job to get done. And this is what this is. It is a cleansing. And so you really need a partner. You need a sponsor, a pace setter to actually see the facts. And it's up to the other person, the pacee, the sponsor to face them, because you're going to be faced with some very hard truths about yourself, because we've built this structure under fear. We've built this structured justifications, delusions for our actions, for fear to set us in motion. So this is the dismantlement of all this stuff, and you're going to see some hard things about yourself. You're going to see some truth about yourself that you don't necessarily really want to see, but do you want to be free? So part of this is just facing it and coming out of consent with it. So it says in the big book, it actually talks about going over your list and being able to see the key to the new life. We turn back to the list, and I'm going to explain the list. For it held the key to the future. And so what is the key? The key is to see this stuff on the inside of me that has caused this spiritual uneasiness, this irritable, restless, discontented spiritual condition that I've soothed with outside things. To see that I've been projected by fear, set in motion by fear, being a slave to fear. And the key is God's perfect love to be able to cast that out. So it's nothing that I can do. It's just what I observe and what I give to God on the altar of my heart, because this is the garden, this is the temple. And so as we go through this inventory, these lists, we start at resentment. So resentment, how have you been burned? How have you been taken advantage of? What grinds your gears? Who's stealing your lunch? Who's upsetting you? Who's betraying you? All of those things. Like, just frustrating. It's a source of contention. You have this stuff in here. You'd rather not see it. You'd rather not deal with that person or institution or principles, other people's values. You just rather just push it aside and never deal with them ever again. But that is the tip of the iceberg. Where there's an iceberg, there's 90% below the surface. So we start at resentment and we go into the ego. So the ego is how I see myself to be okay. And the other part of it, the outside, is how I want you to see me, for me to be okay, my reputation. So you can see that very easily when somebody challenges what you believe in yourself and you feel hurt. And they don't see you as you see yourself. You see yourself as integrity, and they're challenging that, or they come against you, or whatever it is. And so the next level of kind of getting below the surface is looking at your ego. And then we go into the expectations. What do I expect from the world around me? What do I expect from this person? What do I need for them to do? What do I need to happen for me to be okay? Like, what sets this all the narrative for us to be in a proper relationship, to be in unity, not to be at each other's throats. And then we go into our beliefs, our values, and our principles. What do I believe about them? What do I believe about myself? What do I believe how things should go and how things should be, and what role I have to play and what role people have to play? These are my core beliefs, values, and principles. And then we go into the realization of the reality is, man, I do the same things that bother me that I'm bothered about. I do these things in my life, and I've done these things to myself. I actually have these realizations that I'm no better off than the people I'm upset about. These things have happened to me at some level. Might not be with the intensity, especially when it comes to abuse or disease, but when I look at a realization that, I've taken advantage of people, I've taken advantage of situations, I've consumed the world around me, I've taken. I've made my life all about me. And so making these realizations and then seeing the futility of it, and then understanding the fear that when this happens to me or when I'm involved in this, what's the fear that's driving me? What's the fear at the bottom of the iceberg? And so when I see that, I'm actually coming out of consent with the fear, and I find this objectionable, and I want to give it to God. I put it on the altar. I take it, and we're going to put all of this on the altar in step 7. And then I get to see the harms that I've done with people. I see how I withhold, I lie, I do white lies. Even though my motives are good, I still, self-protect, self-care. I do all of these things, and I put wedges between people. I cancel people. I do all of these things for my own protection and care. And it's separated me from everybody. And then we go into conduct inventory of this inventory about how I've had relationships that may have ended, that may have not been healthy. And I'm really looking for God to help me write an ideal self. This is how God wants me to be seen from the world, by the world around me. This is how he sees me. This is how he wants me to conduct myself. If he is the father, the principal, I'm his agent. He's the director. I get my directions from him. I'm just the actor getting told how to do it, what to do, and what to say. And then he's my employer. He's going to have a lot to say on my presentation to the world around me. He might have a dress code for me. He might have a whole moral standard and structure. How does he want me to be his love and light and peace and joy to the world around? Because fear had something to say too, and that's kind of what we've uncovered. We want to take this iceberg and get it out of the core of the temple, because that's what's blocking us from the Spirit of God having his fire in there. So his fire is going to melt that iceberg. But we got to see the iceberg for what it was, what it is, and how it's got in the way of my life and what I've held on to, and all of those things that are producing negative results that make it feasible for me to go and seek ease and comfort from outside things. We are going to be able to expose all of these things inside of us, but we do need a partner. We do need help. We need the light and Spirit of God to guide and direct us in this time, and we get to be able to be nurtured and nourished by the love of God. And so we're starting to feel and experience, see this stuff inside of us, to see the hopelessness of it, of like, if I could have, I would have changed decades ago. But I didn't have a choice, because I was slave to the slave driver of fear. And every day that driver pulls up to my house and says, get in. And for decades I've got in. And today, that's what freedom looks like, is when it pulls up to my house. Fear with his limo pulls up to the house, and I said, no, not today, fear, because I see you. I'm not getting in. And so I believe that's kind of how we start the action part of our step 3 prayer. Step 3 prayer is all action. And so we'll get into the rest of it. Thanks, and we'll see you again for step 5.